I have to say, I have such fucking news politics fatigue already. We're what, 2 months into the sort of presidency? If you can get 1 million plays in a day because Trump got bopped on the nose by a fucking boom mic, it just feels, it's exhausting. I'm kind of having to check out. And I know that people say, oh, well, it's a luxurious position. You don't need to pay attention to politics. It's a luxurious position for you to be in. People at the bottom, they do need to pay attention to politics. It's an interesting stat because actually the most educated, wealthiest people are the ones that spend the most time consuming news and talking about politics. It's the people at the bottom rung of the ladder that don't.
Yeah, no shit. That's kind of the problem here. That's why we got Donald Trump in office. Yes, if you're at the bottom rung of society, you understandably see politics for what it truly is. Something that rich people are doing with one another that is not going to impact your life in any way and only will impact your life in a negative way. Doesn't matter if you pay attention to it or not. That's why I'm so glad I had those 2 conversations with 2 different Uber drivers yesterday. One was activated through podcast into believing a whole bunch of nonsense. The other one was completely tapped out of the subject after voting for Kamala Harris and not really liking the Democrats either. The reason why the second person was not really invested in politics is exactly what I'm talking about. If you can't activate people like her, I mean, think about it. Like, she's a black woman in the United States of America who's genuinely thinking about leaving the country, okay? Cost of living is out of control, and she sees the political instability, and she's like, maybe it's time to fucking leave. Like, we're literally seeing if we can penny pinch our way out of here. This is a person that drives Uber. In any case, the reason why that person, I think I demonstrated fairly well to those who have the capacity to understand what I was doing in that conversation. The reason why that person is checked out is because there's no association for her with any sort of tangible policies that will improve her life. She does not hear that from the Dems at all. She also doesn't think the Dems are being genuine when they advocate for things. She literally said, yeah, Trump does stuff, but when he says something, he's going to do something. That's weakness twofold. That's it.
You're allowed to be exhausted. Anything for clicks, man.
Slow week for news.
Anything for clicks.
That was something that I noticed, a trend that I've noticed over the last couple of years. Legacy media is really struggling to garner attention itself. It seems like fewer and fewer people are listening to it. We saw that over the last election. It seems to me like the best way that legacy media can gain traffic is to talk about independent media.
Yeah.
How many times are we seeing headlines about Andrew Huberman or about the right-wing manosphere pipeline and how it's getting people to do this? Or the other side, like, why is there not a Joe Rogan of the left? Like, you know, whatever the headline is, more and more the way that legacy media is able to achieve traffic is only in reference to independent media.
Yes.
So then, as opposed to us being...
This is correct. These are 2 guys that I don't agree with, but he's right about this. Legacy publishers have dropped the ball spectacularly over and over again for 2 reasons. One, for a good reason. Good reason as in, like, there's a good reason why people are saying, I don't trust you any longer, like Israel-related coverage, for example. And also, for a very bad reason. A very bad reason why people don't trust legacy media is because of the faucet of misinformation that is infinitely easier to understand and read. These 2 issues work side by side with one another. If you are serially wrong in ways that people can comprehend quickly, they're not going to trust you any longer. Meanwhile, you have people hamming up parasocial relationships on the independent side of things where people genuinely think like, oh, Joe Rogan is my friend. Hassan is my friend. He's in my living room all day, every day. There's no way to compete with people like myself if you're a faceless journalist. That's it. Especially if the parasocial relationship-inducing commentary is also chock full of ridiculous misinformation that corresponds to the preconceived biases that people have. That's a huge problem. It's especially an issue for someone like myself because, like, I do work in combating misinformation with regular frequency. Ironically enough, my liberal naysayers and independent media consistently say I'm a misinformer. I'm the Alex Jones of the left. But there's a reason why a lot of these mainstream outlets understand my position in the independent sphere as someone who has an open position, who's not shy about revealing his position, but will actively go after misinformation and combat misinformation directly. So because of that, I can't work without real journalism. Joe Rogan can. He's just going to shoot the shit anyway. There's real journalism out there and these guys still make shit up, right? It's virtually impossible. Joe Rogan doesn't need to convince his audience of his positions. His audience likes him because of his positions. Someone like myself, on the other hand, has to convince the audience of the positions because these positions are not one that are readily available in the wild. And kind of the same goes for mainstream news as well. Like, they have to maintain, as a part of their job, mainstream news outlets have to maintain the neoliberal agenda. They have to maintain the idea that everything you're experiencing, whether it be the cost of living crisis or whatnot, is actually fine. It's actually normal. It's a normal and healthy part of the process of capitalism. It's okay. Things are not as bad as you think they are. Normalize the harm that you're experiencing. It's a big part of what the Fourth Estate does. In that regard, it's also very difficult for them to do that, especially in times of crisis. So when crisis comes around and the media keeps doing the same things that they do all the time to normalize the harm and pain that you're experiencing, only hyper-focus on the viewpoints of, like, I don't know, small business owners or whatever, ultimately, people like Joe Rogan, who are going to take advantage of that resentment and the anger that people feel, are going to win out against mainstream news, and they're going to do it with a chock full of misinformation. This dynamic exists in the duopoly and the last election cycle that took place. You have the Kamala Harris institution defenders running against a guy who wants to put a brick through the institutions. At a time when there's so much economic volatility, so much anger and resentment towards the living conditions that people experience, that they directly attribute to the institutions, yeah, of course people voted for the institution breaking party, because the institution breaking party saw that anger and resentment and said, you're right to be angry, and you should be angry at, more appropriate targets, obviously, not fucking like, corporations of the powerful, but instead gay corporations and the gay powerful or DEI. It is, however, alarming that so many people primarily get their information from the likes of Joe, and that they get their notes from Joe. Like, the things that Joe cares about, they care about too. And because he's so susceptible to misinformation that corresponds to his biases, people end up adopting the most idiotic positions, like the first Uber driver that we talked to. We're talking about Trans Sesame Street. Terrifying prospect for the future of this country.
Downstream from them, they're now downstream from us.
Yeah, and anything masculine is right-wing.
Huh.
Anything. You cannot be masculine. Like, you cannot be interested in physical fitness, anything.
It's a pipeline to being right-wing.
Yes. You can't like fast cars.
Nope.
You're not allowed to. You're not even allowed to like Teslas anymore.
Misogynist.
Which are the fastest cars.
Yep.
Yeah, you're a misogynist. There was a really stupid graph that someone put up of how right-wing social media and new media people
That was the Media
dominate.
Matters study. Yeah. This is interesting.
I was
Jamie,
at the
can you try
top
and
of the
find that?
list. I'm not even right-wing. Just because I support Trump, I supported him over the rest of the fucking nonsense that was going on when you.
I hate this. I hate that he represents the median voter here. What do you mean I'm right-wing? I just voted for the most right-wing administration of all time after endorsing said administration.
It's kind of funny. Like, they're putting Theo Vaughn in
Lex
there.
Friedman.
Yeah, that's Lex Friedman. That's hilarious to put him in there. Who else they have in there that's ridiculous?
Piers Morgan.
Well, Piers Morgan is kind of light right-leaning, I think.
Light right.
But I think he's pretty.
Dog, Piers Morgan literally is more liberal than Joe Rogan on many issues. That is crazy. Like, Piers Morgan is definitely right-wing, okay? 100%. And even a guy that is definitely right-wing on 100%, definitely right-wing 100% on many issues, still can sometimes come across as more liberal than fucking Joe Rogan.
I think he's far more of a centrist.
Is it just a judgment criteria that they're judging shows that aren't right-wing as right-wing? Or is it genuinely that for some reason the left is struggling to make progress in independent media?
Well, they're struggling to make progress in independent media for sure, and they're trying to figure out why. They're trying to figure out why what they are calling right-wing. I think if you looked at all my positions, I think way more of them are left-wing than right-wing.
You know what's crazy? Joe Rogan still maintains this like independent media posture, and in some ways, I guess he is, because he's like, owned and operated singularly. Like, it's a one-person shop, right? So it is technically independent. He's not a mainstream figure. I mean, he is a mainstream figure, but he's not mainstream media. But what's really interesting about it is, like, bro, you glaze up billionaires in the same way that CNN does. Like, your output is not all that different from any number of different websites at this point, any number of different publications at this point. They also glaze billionaires. And it's oftentimes the same billionaires that they're glazing. It doesn't make any sense. What's also very funny, to me at least, is this notion that right-wingers are so, still to this day, even as Trump is in office, it's so funny that right-wingers are so embarrassed to be right-wing. They have to say, like, I have a lot of leftist opinions. I'm an independent thinker. I'm apolitical. It's like, dude, you voted for Trump. Like, what the do you mean you're apolitical? You endorse Trump. It's so stupid. Yeah, you're right-wing and you don't agree with a lot of the things that the Republicans say, but not enough to not vote for them. You know what I mean? Your disagreements are not severe enough that you're like, I'm out. Fuck this. I'm not voting for these dipshits. That's it.